Hey everyone. So as I said in part 1, I got my butt kicked by my wife's boyfriend. To get even, I went absolutely crazy training to fight Jamal. But then I met Jen, a total badass feminist, and we became really close. We even crossed the line a few times. If you want to hear about that, check out the link to part 1 in the description below. But let's get back to the story. He hit the mat, unconscious. I stood there for a second, looking down at Kim, who was staring in shock. I leaned over. I mouthed B. Then I turned and went to my corner, through the ropes, and out of the ring. The four of us went straight to the dressing room. I didn't shower. Manny had a truck outside with all our stuff. We got in and drove off. No press. No TV. Manny drove us back to the farm. The trip took about 2 hours, and we were relieved, getting out of the arena. There was beer for Jenks and me. As we were still about 30 minutes from the farm, Manny pulled over for a second to ask me, "Why didn't you hit him the last time, Brian? I could see the rage come out when you had him on the ropes." "I'm not sure, Manny. It was there. Right there, a damn punk. I didn't want to kill him. I have to think about why." Jen said, "Good for you, Brian. It's pretty sure he's hurt badly enough. Anyway, that's enough." That was a free shot. Totally legal. I'm feeling conflicted. "Okay," she said, "they'll pay you to fight. Do you want to fight?" "I don't know. I have enough money. The business is going well, and I could sell it for a good price, but I like fighting. You could be a champion. But it's not the same today as it was when Ali and Frazier fought. I'll think about it. I like MMA, you know." She laughed. "I bet you'd be a killer." "Seems like I'm not a killer." We got to the farm and unloaded. Jenks was going to stay overnight. We were all in the main lodge, and Jen and I were going upstairs, when Jenks turned on ESPN. It was on. The whole 90 seconds of the fight. Underneath it, it said I'd knocked out Bennett and then vanished. We all chuckled. The reason we ran was the crowd could be very hostile, including Bennett's friends. I found myself exhausted, but the scene of that short fight was fascinating to me. I looked back, and it was like I was back there, but also like I couldn't believe I was the guy I was watching. They had slow-motion video of the knockout punch. I would be there and not there as I watched. Slow and then fast, I had to sit down. As I watched the moment when I could have killed him, I focused on my face. His face goes limp and expressionless. I saw the rage disappear. For a millisecond it was there. Next it was gone, replaced by almost despairing emptiness. I didn't feel despair, as far as I could remember, but it certainly looked like it on the video. Then I saw myself leaning over, staring at Kim. My face was still expressionless, as if I'd planned for this and was going through the motions. I remember leaving the ring, but not the leaning motion. There was a fog there for me. It seemed to dissipate as I went toward the dressing room. I saw myself jump at the end of the runway. Jen was holding my hand. I saw myself squeezing her hand. We looked at each other. I didn't understand what I was seeing. I stood up and pulled her with me. "Time for bed," I whispered. I needed her next to me. Manny and Jenks said nothing. Now, Jen and I were actually in love. We knew it, and we said it. It was something more than what I'd felt with Kim. We undressed and showered together, but no sex games. I put on thin pajamas, and she was in a nightgown. We held each other. She asked, "How did you feel watching it?" I felt alienated from myself. Alienated from the guy who fought. I felt distant, but I know I'm that guy. "I've been thinking about your whole journey here. I believe that you need to resolve the Kim issue, why she did that. All you said is that her family told you she had some mental health problems in the past that they never mentioned. I don't want to see her. She has his kid. She treated me poorly. And it was so sudden, like I'd never meant anything to her. She filed for divorce too quickly." "But Brian, she was your wife for a while, and there was no hint of this until she showed up with the boxer. How could that be?" "I think you'll always be uncertain, maybe about us, if you don't get closure. Maybe you should see her family." "I'll think about it. I can't just go over to their house. As far as I know, Kim lives there." "Let's look into it tomorrow." "Okay, sure." The next day, Jen and I did some research. First, we checked on Bennett. He was still hospitalized, not in danger, but probably out of commission. Then we looked into Kim. It seemed she and Bennett were living together in a condo in Virginia. There was mention of a child, but no details or pictures. ESPN had a story about Bennett's rise and the fight. Kim was shown in a part, hugging him after a win. They said that Bennett's future in boxing was uncertain. I decided to call Kim's parents. They lived in the D.C. suburbs. John worked as a civilian at the Pentagon. Eileen was a high school math teacher. She answered the phone when I called during their lunch hour. "Hello, Eileen, this is Brian." "Oh, "Oh, Brian, why are you calling now? This isn't the best time." "Eileen, I'm sorry about him being hurt. But that's not what I want to talk about. I'm still confused about what happened between Kim and me. I feel like I need an explanation, but I don't want to see her." "I understand. We told you that Kim had some issues when she was a teenager. We believe they're behind her. Not that. Let me see if John would be willing to discuss this. I'll call you back. On this number?" "Yes, thanks." Kim and I continued our work. She kept her cell phone close by, in case they called. The press had been showing up at the farm. We should have anticipated that. They weren't allowed on the grounds, but some clients were worried. And Manny was worried. I had a friend who was a public relations person who was more experienced. I was told that the press would be on us until they had more information. They hate a mystery. Or they like a mystery because it boosts ratings, but it has to be resolved. I sent Jenks out to the gate. I'd set up a room next to his training room for press conferences. He announced that, and the time was 5 p.m. By then, Kim's family had called. I'd set up dinner with them at a hotel in D.C. for a 2-day respite. I thanked them for doing that. Jenks and I discussed how to handle the press conference. Jenks and I went into the place just after 5. There were cameras and flashing lights. I had a statement prepared. I said I hoped Bennett was okay. I also said that I had no plans for a next fight at this time. Finally, I said how grateful I was to have the opportunity to fight a great opponent. There were questions. How did I feel about knocking him out? Numb. Did I believe I could win going into the fight? Yes. Did I think I could beat the champ? Never seen him fight. Why did I lean over when he went down? I don't remember doing that. I guess I was just happy, celebrating. Why did I say B? I don't remember. Was I talking to Bennett's girlfriend? No. Lied. Would I give Bennett a rematch? Not sure. Don't even know if he wants one. At that point, Jenks broke in and ended the press conference. We ran into the main training room. We'd come in through the side when I had the press conference. But now, as we entered the main facility, a group of people were training there. I got a round of applause. Admittedly, it was muted because of the gloves. There were also boos. I smiled and bowed. Then I was punched repeatedly. Then, as I thought about whether to continue or not, I considered those people. I got a ride back to the farm with Jenks. Jen was watching and thought I looked stupid in the car. I told her it was the effect I was going for. After all, I'm a club fighter, right? I try not to draw too much attention to myself. She and I got into the ring. Literally, we had a good fight. I won, but it was close. She hurt me way more than Bennett ever did. We had a great dinner in the main room, and there was some applause from the guys there. I waved. Jen and I went upstairs and watched an old James Garner movie, and then we went to sleep. Then I trained again. Dinner with Kim's family was making me nervous. I asked Jen to come with me. We booked a table for 7 and would stay overnight. John and Eileen arrived on time. I shook his hand and hugged Eileen. I introduced Jen as my business partner. Eileen looked a little down. We ordered drinks. And I asked, I still don't know what happened with my marriage. I was too bummed and ashamed to ask sooner. But Jen said I needed to deal with it somehow, and I agreed. I hope you can help me. Eileen said, Brian, Kim loves you. I think she still loves you. But she's always been a little off. When she was 13, she had a breakdown. She had to go to the hospital for a while. She got out, went back to school. About a year later, she attacked a boy in her class. She hurt him. Hit him with a baseball bat. She went back to the hospital, started taking medicine, and she got better. No relapses since then. John interrupted, until she told that guy to beat you up. I saw that as a relapse. She seemed really off the week before that day, maybe a month. I think she was having sex with Bennett. She brought him here 2 weeks before the whole thing went down. John and I were surprised and disappointed. She said she was living with him. She'd tell you soon. But she didn't seem out of control at that point. He didn't say much. Did you think about telling me? She said she would. So, no, we had no way of knowing what she was going to do. How are they now? I hear she's living with him. She is. She and little Johnny live with him. He's not a bad guy, Brian. I don't know about the beating, but from what we've seen and know, he's not a bad guy. Eileen seemed sincere. Well, I can't say I wish them luck. How old is little Johnny? There was a pause. John said, he's 11 months old. Oh, well then, she could have been pregnant when she brought him here. Are pregnant women more likely to have breakdowns? Another pause. Eileen shook her head. We don't know. She didn't show any signs of a breakdown after that, Brian, just that scene. But it was a horrible scene. Jen had been listening closely to all this. She's smarter than me. She said, do you have pictures of Johnny? Oh no, not here? Not on your phone? Jen asked. Her voice was cold. I was starting to see it. I said, "Eileen, is there anything I need to know?" "John?" Silence. Jen said, "He's your son, Brian, not Bennett's. Somehow they didn't want you to know that." She turned to them. "Why not?" Kim said it was really Jamal's. He would be the one to raise the kid. She asked us not to say anything. "My God, Brian, he looks just like you." I said, "I need to get a handle on this, but I'm not walking away. I can't believe she'd do this. After the beating? Maybe. But this is just awful." John said, "Brian, I feel for you. It is. But what good will interfering do?" "Well, I'm going to find out about my son, and after what they've done, I think I might be able to get custody." Just then the waiter came over and asked if we were ready to order. I hesitated, but then decided to go for it. I was hungry after all. We all ordered. The process seemed to ease the tension at the table. Jen asked me, "What about the divorce? Did she say anything about the pregnancy?" I looked at John, then Eileen. She said Kim's lawyer sent you the papers. Didn't mention a child. There was no child then. When the kid was born, Jamal's name was on the birth certificate. By then, the divorce was final. You know, we all just assumed it was his, not yours. She was with him a lot that month, and you weren't very much. Right? I guess so. Maybe twice with me. What was the deal with Jamal? He must know he's not the father now. He knew right after the birth. He left for a week. Then he came back and has been living with them since then. He doesn't change diapers. We haven't been around them much to say more. Okay, not telling me much. Anything on his condition after the fight? He was hurt. He had trouble speaking clearly. The doctor said he'd probably be fine with rest. He really hurt him, Brian. How does that make you feel? I feel happy I won. I could have killed him, you know. Did you see the fight? John said, I did. I watched live. I watched the video. I know you could have killed him when he was off the ropes, but you didn't. And I don't know why, even now. I hate him. But he got what he deserved, in part. There have been some questions about whether he's got money after this. His backers are worried about his physical condition, but the contract says he's insured for injury. So, maybe. Jen asked, have you spoken to Kim since the fight? No, just on the phone. We have Johnny with us, Brian, at our house with a babysitter. The food arrived. It was a nice restaurant, but I picked at mine. Jen ate hers, and then most of mine. My appetite was gone. We ate in silence, mostly. Then I said, I want to see the pictures, now. Eileen pulled out her phone. She had a ton of photos and videos. They had dessert and I looked. We got coffee. I kept looking. Jen was looking over my shoulder after she finished her own pie. He's so cute, she said. Sure is. Eileen, John, there's no way I'm letting this go on like this. He loves his parents, Brian. You saw it in the videos. I did. We're staying here tonight. Tomorrow I want to see Johnny. How can we arrange that? John said, Kim doesn't even know you're here. I feel bad doing this behind her back. I'll leave it all up to you with her. But I have options here, including a DNA test. But look at him, there's no doubt. I can go to court. They've been messing around with the birth certificate, or I can get it fixed if I can. I don't want a lawyer if possible. Okay, how about you come for lunch tomorrow? Johnny will be here. That's what we did. When Jen and I were in the room, we ordered wine. We hadn't eaten anything at dinner because they don't drink. She asked, what are our options? I'm going to have to talk to someone who knows Virginia law. I know Harry Bacon practices law across the river. I'll call him first thing in the morning. How do you feel about all this, Jen? You know, I should feel threatened, but I don't. I'm sure of your love. Everything else, it's just details. I love you, Jen. You're the best thing. Oh, what about the baby's mother? I laughed. I love her, but never like I love you. The next day at lunchtime, we went to John and Eileen's suburban home. They greeted us at the door and led us to the living room where Johnny was playing on the floor with some blocks. He looked up at us. Eileen said, Johnny, this is Brian and Jen. They're here to visit you and have lunch. Johnny looked at us and then went back to playing with the blocks. I knelt down and picked up a block. I put it on top of his pile. Then another one and another one until there was a tower of blocks. Johnny looked closely at it. He knocked it down with one swat. He laughed and laughed when I said, oh no. I started stacking the blocks again. He waited until they were pretty high, and I sat back to watch. He knocked the tower down again, laughing. We played that game for a while, and then another one with an accordion that was nearby. I would pull or push the instrument, and he would press the buttons, making different sounds. Lunch was announced. I stood up, and so did he. He was walking cautiously. I put out a hand and he took it. We walked into the dining room where Eileen took him and put him in a high chair. He was eating peanut butter and jelly with celery. The grown-ups had quit. Eileen's phone rang. She went into the kitchen. When she came back, she said, "It's Kim. Jamal's being moved to rehab. The place is down the street. She's coming here after he's settled in. I have a feeling she'll be here in 30 minutes. They're already at the facility." I looked at Jen. She said, "There's no reason to delay things. We all see that Brian being here wants to be a part of Johnny's life." John said, "I agree. But be prepared, there's going to be some conflict." Eileen, seeing that Johnny was finished with his lunch, took him for a nap. The three of us discussed how things would go. John would meet Kim at the front sidewalk and let her know about our presence. Her car pulled up. Eileen came down the stairs without Johnny. Jen and I watched Kim get out of the car. She looked haggard, but okay. Her dad met her as she got to the gate. We watched them talk. Kim nodded, looking at the house. She shook her head no. The discussion continued for a while. Eileen went outside to talk. The three came back in a few seconds and walked into the house. Kim was in the middle of her parents. I said, "Hi Kim, I'm Jen." "You're a bitch. A bitch. You hurt Jamal bad. Hurt him." She wasn't loud, but she was emphatic. "I did. But I didn't hurt him as bad as I could have. And you know what, Kim, you're not one to talk. Revenge is a dog-eat-dog thing, isn't it?" She looked down. She didn't speak for about 20 seconds. Then she looked up, tears welling up. "I guess it was my fault. I was wrong and he was wrong. What we did was wrong. I was smitten with him at the bar, and we fell into bed, intoxicated, and I knew I was messing things up. But why did he beat me up? Why the humiliation? Brian, I was afraid that you might do what you did hurt him. I understand you, Brian. You're capable of that. I guess I thought about attacking you myself. That was wrong. Worst day of my life. But I look at Jen. Things are working out great for me. I'm happy. I doubt I can forgive you completely. And you kept me from Johnny, totally in the dark about it. I didn't want you in his life, Brian. Jamal's his father. He's always been there for him. Only because you never told him. It should have been obvious. I'll do what it takes to be in his life, Kim." She walked away. She knew she had to give in. Plus, she was worried about Jamal. She came back and said, "Jamal's badly hurt. He's got a serious concussion, maybe more. The tests say he'll probably get better with time. How could you be so good at boxing, Brian? God, he's one of the best in the country." I had motivation. And expert help. I looked at Jen again. Plus, he thought I was just another schmuck in the month. He wasn't ready. Eileen said, "Let's go into the living room and sit down. Kim, do you need anything?" "Thanks, I'd like some water." She was staring at me and Jen. "None of us knew that Jamal was fighting you, Brian. I didn't know until you took off that robe, if you had a different name. When I saw it was you, I was scared. I was going to stop the fight, but it was over too soon. You called me a bitch. Okay, if the shoe fits. Revenge. It was all revenge. Now what? I don't know. My motivation has changed. Jen and I will decide. Probably mostly her. This is all foreign territory for me. Johnny too. We had some more discussion and then Kim went upstairs to sleep. She needed it. Jen and I went back to our hotel and got our stuff. We went to a motel close to Clark's place. Jen called Manny to say we'd be back in 2 days. She told him about Johnny. When she hung up, she said, "Manny's excited to meet Johnny. He's not as cold as he seems." The next morning, I talked to a lawyer about custody issues in the state. I brought some knowledge home to Clark's. I was hoping we could work something out. Jen and I discussed the idea that Johnny could spend some time at the farm. She said Kim would probably have to come with him for a while at least. Or maybe Eileen and John. Obviously, Kim had also spoken to a lawyer about Johnny in custody. She wasn't tough about me seeing him. While we were talking, Jen was playing with him on the floor. When he knocked over the first tower she built, she caught it, both hands, and leaned it back up. Kim and I stared. It was an amazing feat. Johnny wasn't impressed. He knocked it over again, and this time it fell. We decided that Eileen and Johnny would come with us to the farm for a week. Then we'd see. Kim would deal with Jamal. He wasn't interested in seeing Johnny anyway, at that point. Johnny stayed at the farm for 2 weeks. He was the most popular guy there. Eileen and Johnny had a room in the main house and ate with the rest of us. Eileen wasn't oblivious to the attractive men around her. She flirted, but that was it. Johnny walked, then ran around. Jen and I entertained him after dinner, and Manny was nice to him too. But it was business, and Manny, Jen, and I made sure of it. Manny decided to hire a different trainer. He had someone in mind, Chin Yang. He was American as any one of us. He had been trained in Pennsylvania, had military experience, and had trained fighters for the military and the federal government. He was 34, but looked 20. He came in from Pittsburgh for an interview. We all liked him, and he accepted the position on the spot. He needed 2 weeks to finish up what he was doing. As he left, he turned to me. "You were in that boxing match the other day?" Will I look like you?" "Yes." "That's a long story." "I'd love to hear it someday." He smiled and left. Chin's nickname, unbelievably, was Rob. I was eager to find out about that. I suspected it was something totally innocent. As he left, Eileen appeared. She said hello to Rob and Rob smiled back at her. She smiled back, a little flirtatiously. I started to wonder about her. Kim might be an apple that didn't fall far from the tree. Jen and I took Aileen and Johnny back to Virginia. When we arrived, Kim was there and she and Johnny embraced. It was warm, and if it weren't for our history, I would have been warmed in my heart. But, there wasn't much of that anymore now. I found myself more curious about what she would say, though, if we talked. And we did. After Johnny was settled in, we found John was making dinner. Dinner would be served at 6, so we could be on the road to Mountain City. That gave us a couple of hours for socializing. Jen pulled me aside and said, "Maybe it's time you talk to her. It's what needs to be done." "Maybe. If she'll agree." "I think she needs to do it as much as you do. Just go and get her out on the back patio." That's what I did. I went to where she and Eileen were playing with Johnny. "Hey, Kim, can we talk outside?" She looked scared. "Okay." She got up and we walked to the back patio. I said, "I think we should talk. Maybe about Johnny. But really, I want to understand what happened." "Me too." She started crying. I started sleeping with Jamal. He's handsome. Well, he was handsome back then. And maybe I've always liked black guys, so when he came on to me at the bar, I was tempted, and when we did it, it was great. Sorry. Did you, just like him, simply? Yes, it wasn't your fault. You and I were a good fit. But I've always had a restless side. Were we doomed from the start? This is bad, Kim. But I can understand. Basically you're saying you've always been a slut. Sorry. She smiled. But the scene here, at the house, I don't understand that. Why did you want to humiliate me? I've thought about that a lot. I felt so bad about sleeping with Jamal behind your back. I felt guilty all the time. And I knew that I was going to keep seeing him. It was exciting. So I felt more guilty. I thought I was starting to blame you. I thought my guilt was your fault. You were too good. And so I felt even more guilty. I started to resent you for being too good to me. She shrugged. But I think it makes sense, in a twisted, messed up way. So it wasn't a mental breakdown, then. Not like before, at least. I hope I've grown out of that. It was like I was rationalizing my bad behavior. Otherwise, I'd only have myself to blame. But it was definitely crazy. Yeah. And it made me determined to come back. Well, you can make a fortune with boxing. Maybe you should thank me. Jamal's probably done. He doesn't think so, but I do. What are we going to do about Johnny? We shouldn't fight custody if we can avoid it. Split the time somehow. How long can you be away from your new place? Not that long. But I hired a new guy. Actually, I'm thinking about buying some property near the farm, an abandoned ski lodge, and if I do that, I could give you a place. But I don't know about you and Jamal. I wouldn't abandon him. He's really bummed out right now. It drives me crazy. Tell me why he agreed to the beatdown. When you two showed up at the door, it seemed like he was the one who was taking the two of you away. Okay, Brian Jamal was mad. Mad like I saw you when you punched him. You must have seen it in his boxing matches. No. He was fighting guys he could beat easily. He didn't need his anger. He was mad at, what? Not at me, at least. Guys like you. He grew up in the inner city. Guys played him dirty since he was 9 years old. Ah, okay. Wrong place, wrong time. I told him to hit you. I didn't know he'd go that far. Then I asked him about it. That's what he said. When we finished talking, I thought I understood some of what had happened. She had some character flaws I hadn't seen right away. She was a slut. There's no other way to put it. But a complex slut with a conscience that made her hate herself. Unbelievable. We had dinner. John was a good cook. It turned out he did most of the cooking. Plus the work. I wondered more about John and Eileen. Where was she when she could cook? Then, on the drive home, I gave Kim a ride with Jen. It turned out she had gone upstairs and was listening to us through the open window. She said, "That's about as true as you can get." Yeah, so what do we do with Johnny? Plus, Jen, will you marry me? I love you so much. I was going to wait. But after that talk, I feel liberated somehow. Brian, she cried. Yes, you're going to ask me while you're driving. I'm going to make you pay for that. She laughed through her tears. We got married on a Saturday, a month later. It was a small ceremony at the farm. I couldn't find my mother to invite her. Manny had a sister come with her husband and two almost grown kids. John, Eileen, and Johnny were there too. Kim decided not to come, although Jen insisted we should invite her. Jen and I had a short honeymoon on a Delaware beach. Then back to work. I signed a contract to fight a light heavyweight. I was getting $200,000. It was because I was a mystery guy and like Rocky, a club fighter. The fight was in a month. No matter who won, the money would fund the purchase I wanted to make. I got Jen, Manny, and Jenk's advice on this decision and the training I needed. We worked out a regimen and I stuck to it. Jenk said I had to abstain from sex. Jen shot that down. I trained and went to Philadelphia for the fight. The opponent was Rick Sutter. He was almost the same size as me, shaved head and a flashy, aggressive style. Jenks and I studied the video. He had fought 34 times and won all but one. This isn't a boxing story yet, so I can just say the fight went the full 12 rounds, and I wore him down. I didn't come out unscathed like before. My body ached for 2 weeks from the clinches with this guy. I dropped him once, in the 10th round, with a right hand. I thought he was out, but he got up. The bell saved him, and he recovered enough to finish. He was a real fighter, and I admired him no matter how flashily. After the fight, I did a quick press conference stating that I didn't know if I'd fight again, and I retreated to the farm. I had called a realtor about the abandoned ski lodge. 52 acres, a lodge and cabins. It had been used as a summer camp for the YMCA, so the buildings weren't too run down. With the $150,000 I got from the fight, after taxes, I could buy it outright, with some of my savings. I also made a deal to sell my business. It had been doing well, and I sold it to the employees in a complicated deal that left me with some cash and a continuing payment for half a year. Now I was a landowner. As for Manny, Rob Chin was working out great. He had made up for my boxing absence. He had a close friend named Billy Williams. They were friends in the military and had similar backgrounds. Manny hired him too. Business was good. People came and went, and everyone paid. I was always surprised at how well Manny's business model worked. But I never asked too many probing questions. What really made it work was Manny's ability to teach. There were a lot of guys like Rob and Billy, but there was only one Manny. After all the fuss about me as a boxer died down a bit, I returned to peace at the farm and with Jen. Then, as if fate didn't like me being content, Kim broke up with Jamal. She moved back in with her family and seemed okay with it, but not for long. She arrived at the farm with little Johnny after New Year's Day. We put them in an upstairs room, a small one. Then the three of us, Manny, Jen, and I, discussed what to do with her. I went upstairs and took her to a different spot to talk privately. I asked, "What happened with Jamal?" He felt like I brought him bad luck. You know, he'll never be a long-term guy. He was too handsome and young. Aha. So, now what? I think Johnny needs you in his life. His dad. And although I love my parents, I don't want to live with them. I was wondering if there were any jobs around here and a place to stay. Let me think about that, Kim. You know, that whole thing, it still stings. More than stings. Okay, I'm not a fighter, but I can get things done, and I've got a quick head. I mean, for practical things. I can only be sorry so much. But I really am sorry. You left me for a pretty girl, after all. Not just a pretty face, dude. She started laughing. I'm not so pretty anymore. I started laughing, and she didn't stop. I asked, "How is he doing now?" "He's mostly back after rehab. He's starting to train again. He wants to fight the guy you just fought." "Okay, well, I'm not that keen. He got paid and paid back. Even. Except for you. I'm not kidding about maybe getting a place here. I want to pay my way if I stay." I had a further discussion with Manny and Jen about Kim. Jen didn't mind if she stayed. Manny looked at me and asked, "What about you, Brian? Can you handle having her around?" Yes, for Jen. She hurt me and I'm much better for it. What can she do? She's smart. She's healthy but doesn't know anything about what we do here. She majored in business in school, took accounting too. Manny asked, "What are your plans for the ski lodge?" "I'm going to renovate and try to rejuvenate it into a nature and fitness retreat. Trails, swimming, rafting, archery, and so on. And you need someone to organize the renovations, price things, cost out borrowing, etc. She could contribute there." Jen said she could stay in one of those cabins. That's what we arranged. I took another fight to make some more money. It was against the #1 contender in New York. The guy was Rodrigo Sanchez. I realized I'd have to work hard to keep him from beating me. Jenks, and sometimes Manny, helped. We studied video of all his fights. He had scary power. Again, the fight went the full 12 rounds. Again, I dropped my opponent, this time in the 9th round, but he was angry. And he came back at the end of the round. That really got me mad. I did my calming routine in my corner. My head cleared, but I decided to crush this guy. Well, that proved way harder than anything I'd been through before. He was still angry, and contrary to all my training, I got into exchanges in the middle of the ring for the last 2 rounds. No one went down, but a lot of punches were thrown. For me, I pushed him into the ropes and attacked the body. He just kept firing at my head. He got me a couple of times, but I reacted by attacking him. I must have thrown 30 punches to his body each round. I was angry, no doubt. Then, I realized the crowd was standing and yelling. But as it was happening, I was only seeing this guy, just him and me. That's it. I ended the 12th round by hammering him in the corner. I never heard the bell. The referee had to pull me off. I looked at Sanchez. I was surprised he could stand, but he stared back at me. I nodded, and he nodded back. The fight was declared a draw. Looking back, I think it was fair. At the time, I didn't care. And this is what I really thought. If it had been 15, I would have won, or maybe died trying. There was no way we were driving home after that. We had rooms in a nearby hotel. I had to be checked by a doctor before I could leave the arena. Sanchez had gone to the hospital but hadn't stayed long. He had a broken rib. I slept fitfully after the fight. Then I slept in the truck all the way back to the farm. Then I slept 18 hours more. When I woke up, it was morning, and when I checked my body, I was sore, but functional. There was no post-fight press conference because neither of us could make it. Jenks set up a press conference in his adjoining room for 5 people that day. Before I went down, Manny and Jen and Jenks and I watched the whole fight. Finally, I think we all accepted the draw. If I could have avoided that knockdown at the end of the 9th, I would have won. I won the last 3 rounds. All the judges scored the 9th round a draw. Before the press conference, Jen and I discussed whether I wanted to fight again. Her opinion was that Sanchez was the best fighter I'd ever faced. She had a disdain for the champ. She said he was a puncher. Sanchez would beat him. And then I could get a big payday fighting Sanchez again. I said, you know, Jen, that fight, it was real and completely absorbing for me. For the last part, there was nothing else in the world, just the fight. I could get addicted to it. But I'd get hurt so bad. You came out of this okay though, but I'm still worried. If you fight again, it has to be the last one. We'll make enough. Actually, we've already made enough. I started the press conference with a statement praising Sanchez and wishing him luck against the champ. I meant every word. I believe there was a connection that grew between us during the fight. There were a lot of questions about the fight, called a classic. My answers about the first 8 rounds were analytical. About the 9th through 12, all I could say was, at those rounds they were fun. Really not fun. Valuable, just hard to describe. I'll never forget it. Oh, unless I got hit in the head too many times. Everyone laughed at that. Jen didn't think it was that funny. I got another round, quiet, of applause from the guys in the gym. I made a small thank you speech to them, then we had a small party. Life after that resumed at the farm. I talked to Kim about hiring her to organize the new business. She was excited, but scared too. She said, "How can you trust me to do this after what happened?" "Because we're not married. You can sleep with anyone you want except Jen. This is business. I trust you because that's what you're good at." "Okay, I can say this, Brian. The thing I want most in the world now is to not let you down." She had a tear in her eye when she said it. I believe she meant it when she said it. We called the new project Mountain Adventures. Kim had interviewed a general construction manager, and we hired Harvey Bristol Harv. He was 40, experienced not just in renovation but also landscaping. We all thought he was perfect. The one thing that made me a little uneasy about Harv was that he had gone through a nasty divorce the year before. He and his wife shared custody of their 2 teenage sons. I wondered if he might be distracted. I talked to Kim about it before we made the offer to him. I'm a little worried about his family situation. He might still be caught up in that. I think I can soothe his pain, Brian. He was a big, good-looking guy, dark hair and solidly built. I smiled at Kim. You mean you're going to seduce him? I don't think it'll take much seduction. I like him. I want him. So, I'll take him. I hope you don't mind, Brian. It won't affect business. Just make sure it doesn't. And Kim, you can't trick him. That won't be good for business. Can I trust you? Yes. Kim didn't waste any time. Harv was smitten, no chance. He moved into the back room of the cabin she was using as an office for the project. I would say that Harv's mood improved a lot with Kim's intervention. And Kim's mood was better too. I think they worked as well as a team in bed as they did on the project. Harv's 2 teenage sons were working summers on the project, general construction. They were 15 and 16, but they had worked with him before and knew how to work. They were good hires. They mostly stayed with their mother in town. However, I heard them joking with Harv about Kim. He shut that down quickly. Things were going well, and comprehensively. But of course, stuff still happens. Jen and I decided she would stop taking birth control, and she got pregnant quickly. Then Kim got pregnant. She and Harv were happy. I don't know if they planned it, but I'm sure she did. Obviously, Harv's ex-wife, Alice, wasn't happy about it. So what, right? Meanwhile, Eileen and John came to the farm to visit Johnny and Kim. We all had a big dinner in the lodge dining room at Mountain Adventures. Little Johnny was now fully integrated into our lives. Eileen and John had a room in the main house at the farm. They were staying for 2 weeks. On their second night there, I woke up to pee at midnight, and as I passed Manny's room, I heard unmistakable sounds of sex. The next morning, I asked Jen about it, but she knew nothing. As far as I knew, there was only one woman in the house besides Jen, Eileen. Later, I asked Kim about it. Oh, sure. Mom and Manny hit it off at dinner. When they left, I was sure she'd nail him. Now you see where I learned that from. My God, Kim, what about your dad? He doesn't mind, Brian. Mom's got needs, and he can't always fulfill them. Sometimes he likes to watch. At least that's what my mother says. Holy crap. Right? She laughed. My observations over John and Eileen's stay convinced me that both Eileen and John never slept in their own room during their time here. I could tell Manny's mood seemed less somber when Eileen was around. After that first visit, John and Eileen were regular visitors to the farm. Any pretense at discretion ended with their second arrival. I mean to the farm. Things were going well. The project and the pregnancies were going great. Then Sanchez won the championship by a convincing decision. Jen reminded me that she had predicted that. I took a fight in Pittsburgh, just to keep sharp. I carried the guy for 4 rounds, then dropped him in the 5th. We all had a meeting at Mountain Adventure about whether I should fight Sanchez for the title. By we all, I mean Jen, Manny, Jenks, Kim, Harv, and me. Both Kim and Harv were sure the money allotted would get the project finished. So if I took the fight, it wasn't going to be about the money, although it would help. Manny was neutral. Jenks was all in. He told me I could be champ. To him, it was like the Holy Grail. He'd never gotten there. He thought I could. After everyone had spoken, Jen looked at me. I know you'll do it, Brian. I have my fears, but you're you. This has to be the last one, win or lose. Agreed. I saw a small smile on Manny's face as Jenks jumped up and down. The fight was set for March in Vegas. I was going to make a lot of money. In the meantime, the pregnancies ended successfully, and so did the project. Jen gave birth to our beautiful daughter, Melissa. Kim had another boy, Jack. She objected to Harvey. Kim and Harv got married right before she gave birth. It was a small ceremony at Mountain Adventure. I spent 5 weeks training for the last fight of my boxing career. Jenks and Manny spent time watching video, both of Sanchez's fights and the fight he had against me. They tried to figure out how Sanchez might be different. Jenks said, "You dropped him in the late rounds, Brian. This fight is set for 15 minutes. He'll want to finish it early." Manny added, "But not too early." "When do you think, Jenks?" 9 or 10. That's when he'll try to brawl, maybe 8. They were absolutely right. The fight started as a boxing match. I attacked Sanchez with straight punches. He hit me a few times with good right hands. I noticed that when he threw his right hand, there was never a straight jab to set it up. It was a straight right, different than the fight before. That's how he was going to beat me. In my corner after the 7th round, Manny said, "He's dropping his left hand when he throws his right. You can hook him." The 8th round started calmly. I was jabbing and using a right cross. Then Sanchez threw a straight right, and I dropped him with a right hook. He hit the canvas. He got right up. He had fire in his eyes. Oh no! He charged at me, and I threw him into the ropes, like I had before. I hit him to the body, and he threw a good hook to my jaw. Then we went into the middle. He threw another right hook, and I hit him with another hook. I was surprised he didn't go down. The round ended. I asked Jenks in the corner, "What now?" "He's going to go all out now. He's down on points since the knockdown. He'll be tired if you can weather the storm." His prediction about him coming out hard was good. His prediction about him being tired wasn't so good. Sanchez was a rejuvenated fighter in the 9th. He threw a barrage of punches from every angle. I threw some good punches, especially an uppercut near the end of the round. I was tired going into the corner. Jenks instructed me to bully the guy. I knew what he meant. I had won my last fight on the ropes with body punches. I just didn't know if I could do it. The next 5 rounds were a brawl. It was almost continuous, very little rest. I kept myself in it by pushing him into the ropes and hitting him dozens of times to the ribs and kidneys. He hit me twice with hooks that got my attention, made my head ring. I locked him up after each one. I was on the stool going into the 15th. I felt like I couldn't move. I looked at Jen. She had her fist raised, her right fist. She muttered the words, "Off the ropes." I got up and met him in the middle of the ring. We touched gloves. Then we went at each other, full speed. About 2 minutes into it, I pushed him into the ropes and hit him to the body. Again, he took a couple of punches and I could feel him sag. I stepped back and punched him with a right hand to the jaw. It was the hardest punch I've ever thrown, and he went down sideways to the canvas. I staggered toward my corner. I was sure the fight was over. But he got up. The ref talked to him, and he answered. We stood there for a second after the ref signaled, just looking. Then he waved me in. I punched him in the face, and he shoved me. He threw a right hand to my head. The bell rang as it whistled past my jaw. He collapsed onto me and I fell into him. I said, "You're a great fighter." "So are you. I'll never fight you again?" The decision was unanimous in my favor. I was champ. There was no post-fight press conference. We were both in the hospital getting fluids. I was released the next day. I looked like I had been hit by a truck. Back at the hotel, Jen and I just laid in bed for a while. I went downstairs to do a press conference. Jen came with me. I announced my retirement. I said I had accomplished what I wanted and that I'd never want to fight Sanchez again. I told them I was sure he would regain the title. He's the toughest man. When he got up at the last minute, I was floored. If he'd hit me with that last punch, I'd probably have been done. It was enough for me. I didn't answer any more questions. The next day we flew back to Mountain City. 5 years later, Jen and I had another one, Terrence. Melissa and Johnny are doing great. They go to the local public school. Johnny's been training with Manny for a while. No one can mess with him. Kim and Harv had another child, Joan. She's cute. Kim hasn't found anyone to hit Harv yet, but we're all holding our breath. There are a lot of guys around who could handle that requirement, but I think motherhood has calmed her down some. John and Eileen sold their house in Virginia and moved up here. They have a small place just outside the Mountain Adventure compound. They still visit Manny at night. Usually both of them, but sometimes just Eileen, and never just John. They both seem content with whatever arrangement they have. I don't ask, and they don't tell. Both the farm and Mountain Adventure are thriving. New people come and go. But Rob and Billy are still there, teaching with Manny and Jen and sometimes me. There are no women in their lives. That's odd. Sanchez won the tournament for the vacated championship. As for Jamal Bennett, he's not the fighter he was after that knockout. He retired last year and is working in D.C. for the public schools. I hear he's married and has kids. He wasn't a bad guy. He just shouldn't have messed with a married woman, especially Kim. The thing is, if he hadn't seduced Kim, I'd never have been champ. I can't hate him anymore. Hate is bad for your health. As for me, I still like to chop wood. I'll never box again. Sometimes I watch Mama Ufksiders. I find it entertaining. I can't tell you what will happen next, but I can tell you that I know the story is still going on. The farm is still there, and Manny's still training fighters. Kim and Harv are doing well, running Mountain Mad Ventures. They're both still pretty wild, but somehow they've found a way to make it work. They're still raising their kids. And they're still kind of like my family, although they're my ex-wife and her current husband. I guess things are different now, and maybe everyone's grown up a little. Jen and I are happy. We both feel like we've built a pretty good life together. I still love to watch her with our kids, and I still love her laugh. I can't believe how lucky I am. I have a wonderful wife, 3 amazing kids, and a business that I enjoy working on.